I get discouraged for sure, and I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.
Hello and welcome to COS Indiana Live as we bring you Roundtable. The Roundtable segment is presented here every fourth Monday of the month at 7 p.m. We'll be focusing on education and discussion of the topics and challenges we all face as we use the Constitution to save the Constitution. Join us now as we bring you COS Indiana Roundtable with our MC, John Ackerman.
And welcome to COS Indiana Roundtable. I'm your host, John Ackerman. This is broadcast number 199 of COS Indiana Live. 199 times we've come to you. We're bumping up on that 200 mark, which will happen pretty soon. Well, this month's topic is the Runaway Convention lie. You know, the opposition likes to do everything they can, whether it's truthful or untruthful, to stop the Convention of States from happening. And the one big lie they tell is about the so-called Runaway Convention. And we're going to tackle that lie tonight and debunk it from start to finish, from top to bottom. Looking forward to it. So I'm going to bring the roundtable panel on right now, and we'll see. Here they come. First one is our State Director, Dale Tipton. Welcome, Dale.
Hello, John. How are you?
I am well, thank you. And our great help from Brandon Garrett. Good evening, Brandon.
Yep.
And also Ken Kashuba, our State Communications Coordinator. Welcome back, Ken.
Good evening.
Yes, good to see you. And Gary Harbaugh, who's a great member of our Indiana team. And there's a member of the comms team, Dale Parrish, former State Director. And our special guest this month is coming in right now, and her name is Debbie Stewart. Welcome back, Debbie.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good to see you here. You are our resident constitutional coach. And so for the first few questions this time around, it's going to be more or less a dialogue between me and Debbie. I want to set the stage and get the historical facts out there about the so-called Runaway Convention. And Debbie has the answers. If any other member of the team wants to chime in, you certainly can. Just raise a hand, and that'll indicate to me that you have a comment to make. But we're going to get started with the first few questions here, dialoguing with Debbie. Now, the first thing that some people claim is that Congress called the Constitutional Convention and limited the delegates to amending the Articles of Confederation. That's not what happened. Debbie, tell us what really happened.
What really happened is at the Annapolis Convention, the delegates there were the ones that called for the Constitutional Convention.
And did they limit the delegates to anything?
Nope.
Okay. They were free to do whatever they had to do to come up with a constitution that would meet the needs of the young republic. Mm-hmm. Question number two, before I give you question number two, I want to tell the viewing audience, if you have a question or comment about the Runaway Convention, you can post it right now if you're watching live on Facebook or YouTube. Just click the comment button and enter your comment or question. My second question for Debbie is, what instruction was given to delegates at the Constitutional Convention?
Yeah, they were supposed to render the Constitution of the federal government adequate for the exigencies of the Union or any pressing need.
Okay, they were not limited to amending the articles. they were to render the Constitution adequate
Yes.
for the exigencies, whatever that word means. Dale Parrish, yes, sir. Oh, Dale, you're muted. Start over.
Well, I muted myself just like everybody, just like I told everybody to do that, right? Okay. I just want to, these first two questions I think are really, really important. And I just want to stress the fact that these delegates were sent there to create whatever was necessary for the country, not just to focus on the Articles of Confederation. So I think it's a very, very important part of what we're talking about tonight. So don't want to go into any more detail, but just wanted to stress those two points.
I think it was pretty common knowledge that the Articles were not working, and no amount of amendments could fix them. Mm-hmm. They just had to be done away with, and a whole new Constitution drafted. That became apparent. So my next question, Debbie, what role did Congress play in calling the Constitutional Convention?
They had no role whatsoever.
No role whatsoever. Did they have anything to say about the convention before it happened?
No, actually, I believe there were 5 or 6, maybe even 7 states that had already called for it, and then they just kind of endorsed it partway through that. And then some more states jumped on board after Congress endorsed it. But it's important to remember that the central federal government had a lot less power than it has today. So the states did almost everything back then.
Yes, it was the states who took the initiative. And Congress didn't have any role in calling the convention at all. They merely endorsed it. And as states were lining up and getting on board, each state calling for a constitutional convention. Okay, here's my next question, Debbie. What authority did the Articles of Confederation give Congress to call a constitutional convention?
Well, actually, they didn't have any authority either. The Articles of Confederation gave them no authority to do that.
No authority to do that. So Congress was powerless to act. Yep. And they had nothing to do with it. They just endorsed it after it came out. So here's my next question then. So who called the Constitutional Convention?
Yeah, so it was the delegates at that Annapolis Convention. Only 5 states showed up. And they knew they needed more authority and they needed more states. So they called another convention, which would be in Philadelphia. And then also the states jumped on board. 12 out of the 13 states also called for the convention. 10 of them before it started in Philly, and 2 jumped on board right after it started.
Okay. They wanted to get on the train before it was too late leaving the station. So it was you said 10 out of the 13, and then it was 12 out of the 13.
Yeah, Rhode Island never got there.
That was my next inquiry. Which state was derelict of duty? One way to put it. Okay. Well, here's a question. I think the answer to which might throw some people for a loop. In our nation's history, how many conventions of states have there been?
Interesting. I don't hear a lot about this. It's actually been 42 so far, at least 42, and not one is deviated from the scope of its call, and none of them were deviated from their purposes either. So we have 0 runaway conventions so far.
You know, the historical record is something pretty good to go on. 0 runaway conventions. Yes, Ken.
Got a question.
Okay. Question from the internet.
What were the 5 states that originally called for the convention?
Oh, Debbie, do you know it? Do you have it there in front of you?
I probably, let me see if I do. I might. Okay. I think it's Virginia, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Delaware.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Virginia was the key state there, I think.
Right, both for Annapolis and the Constitutional Convention. I think Virginia was the key.
Yeah, Virginia was first, November 1786.
Yeah.
Okay. See, the history is there. It's all there. You just have to know how and where to dig to find it. But it's amazing to me that there have been 42, at least 42 conventions of states in our nation's history. There hadn't been any recently, not in my lifetime, but this is a tried and true method. Yes, Dale Parrish.
Yeah, John, I just wanted to point out in my research on this, back in the day, a convention of states was like what we would call today, like putting together a task force to address a problem. Back then, they called that a convention of states. They called a convention. In other words, they got a group of states together to address a particular problem, maybe something that was happening between the states or that they needed to get everybody involved in. So the Convention of States terminology really comes from back in the day when that was the language used. Today we would say, let's put together a task force or a committee or something to address those kind of problems. So just a clarification there.
Very good. And each state would choose from among their best and brightest thinkers and leaders and send them to this convention, and they would hammer out answers to common problems. Yeah, Gary, I saw your hand.
Yeah, a couple key points. One is that you think about the key role was the state legislatures. Mm-hmm. These are the people who are in control, and Article 5 gives them the same authority today. The second point I'd like to make is there really has been some, might have been in your lifetime, and that's the last aspect of the Colorado River Compact. And this was a multi-state meeting where a number of the states that border the Colorado River got together, and their scope of authority was to discuss and agree on a way to divvy up the waters of that river. There's also something quite close to that having to do with the Great Lakes, but this also involved a foreign country because a couple of Canadian provinces were involved. But it was the same concept in which state legislatures got together. Each state had one vote, and they had to come to an agreement of how to resolve whatever the issue was they were dealing with.
You know, now that you mention it, I do remember the Colorado River Compact. Yes, I remember something about that. I just don't know when it happened. But that was only the states that depended on or wanted water from the Colorado River. It wasn't all 50 states by any means,
right.
Was it?
Correct.
Okay. So that's a very good example. And they didn't deviate from their call either. They stuck to the topic that was assigned to them, and they did the work. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, Dale Tipton.
I just had another thought. You know, as we're talking about this and you're thinking about the myths that are perpetrated by various organizations about, you know, this Runaway Convention and all this kind of stuff. You know, this is, I mean, comparatively speaking, this is really kind of a deep dive into history. I mean, if you think about the facts that we're discussing this evening, I don't know how many average people that you would talk to that would have any idea about this. And so whenever they hear the lie or they hear the myth, I don't think they probably even know where to go to research this kind of thing. And so they just believe it.
Yep. And I first, okay, Ken, I'll go to you and then I'll say what I was going to say.
I'm just going to bring up a comment by one of our viewers that kind of falls in line with what Dale T was talking about there, because he's got a kind of a solution question. Yeah, obviously talks about, you know, whoops, how that disappeared.
I'm sorry, I did that.
Okay, that's the gremlin in the back room there. It says he's run into people that say we have no clue how they intended a convention to run, since Article 5 does not specify. So he wants to know, how do we best share the truth with them? So this is something I think we struggle with here in Convention of States in getting our message out all across the board. So anybody have any good ways of sharing the truth of this? I mean, obviously we're doing our part now, and we would like people who are joining us in the viewer room to share this type of information. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Dale.
Charlie, that's a real good question, and I'm glad you asked it. Dale Parrish, what do you have for him?
Well, Charlie, we're doing that very thing right now. You as a district captain, when you hold town hall meetings, that's when you get the truth out. Of course, we have websites, we have celebrity endorsements, we have the national website that has a wealth of information that people can read and access. So there's a watch the simulation coming up, yes, or the simulation that has already occurred. There's another one being planned very soon. So there are a number of ways and means of getting the truth out, but it's up to each of us individually to spread the word and make those ways available to people and make people aware that those ways exist.
Yeah, and I want to thank Robert for putting that comment in the chat box there, because that was one of the things that popped into my mind when Charlie's question came up. There's been a simulation, and it was based on historical precedent of what happened in these 42 real conventions of states that have happened in our nation's history. They start off with electing officers, and they agree to rules, and they have to stick to the subject matter that was in the call. And the simulation that Convention of States did a few years back was just an excellent example of how this thing can work and will work when it becomes a reality. And we hope in the very near future, hope to see it happen in just the next few years. Yes, Brandon.
Well, I'll add in too, John, like there's a plethora of information out there about that question. I answering this more for everyone else on the other platforms because I'm engaging on Facebook with Charlie. So Charlie already saw my answer, but James Madison especially talked about this quite a bit in the Federalist 40. So any of us that want to be good students of history to understand kind of how this process works, just need to look no further than, hey, what were the guys doing that built the country doing? How did they go about it? Like there is tons and tons and tons of documentation around what they did. And there's also a good book by Robert Nadelson. It's called The Law of Article 5. There's lots of good information in there as well. It's very kind of academic and like legalese written, but it will provide you that knowledge base that you need to have an informed conversation with people that you're running into that are like, hey, I've heard this, I've heard that about the Runaway Convention, this, or it's going to go off the rails, that. Like that will, the best thing you can do is to equip yourself with the knowledge from the countless number of examples that we have, because the Founding Fathers, thankfully, were very judicious and studious about documenting what they were doing because they knew what would happen if they didn't.
Very good, very helpful stuff. Great input from the viewing audience tonight. Thanks, Ken, for bringing those comments and questions to the forefront. Now we have laid the historical and philosophical foundation for really attacking the Runaway Convention. Before we do that, we're going to take a short break. And here's a new segment we're calling the Soapbox. And our State Director, Dale Tipton, got up on the soapbox and made this video for us. And it doesn't have anything to do with the Runaway Convention, but it is timely. The Durham report came out last week, and Dale's going to talk about that right now.
Tipton. I'm the state director with Convention of States here in Indiana. But also today I am speaking as a former special agent with the FBI, serving 24 years in the offices located in Chicago, Illinois and Merrillville, Indiana. I'd like to address a couple of comments about the John Durham investigation and his 300-page report which he has released. And as you all know, his basic task was to examine the results of the Robert Mueller investigation concerning Russiagate or Russia collusion with President Trump or the Trump campaign. Basically, the Mueller investigation did not find any results of collusion, and the Durham investigation found out that in fact not only were there no results found, that in fact, the investigation probably never should have been brought to begin with, that the probable cause was flimsy, that the information which was proven to come from opposition research from the Hillary Clinton campaign, really let the world know that there was nothing to it. You know, it was bought and paid for by the Clinton campaign. It was not vetted. It was not backed up by any other sources, and the FBI chose to take it and run with it. That was a mistake. But why did that happen? People in power believed that Donald Trump would be a bad president, and once he became president, they really made a thorough attempt to discredit him and try to throw him out of office through whatever means they could. This is the emergence of political power, power within the media, power within major corporations that targeted first an American citizen, a presidential candidate, a president, and then once again a citizen. This was wrong. There were similar investigations involving the Clinton campaign that Mr. Durham concluded were handled completely differently. They weren't looked at sincerely, and there was no effort to push that investigation, the opposite case in the Trump investigation. We are living in a world currently where our institutions that we loved and believed in have been corrupted by political power. This includes the FBI, the IRS, the CIA, and other alphabet agencies of the federal government. We no longer live in a time where individual citizens' rights are paramount. We cannot let this stand under our watch of citizens of the United States of America. Thank you for your time.
Pretty good food for thought. Thank you, Dale, for sharing that with us on your soapbox. So we come back now to talking about the Runaway Convention. And we're calling this program the Runaway Convention Lie. I don't use that word lie lightly. I think it's thrown around much too easily these days, but I think the so-called Runaway Convention is a lie, just no truth in it. So I want to ask the whole panel, Debbie gets first crack at this because she's our guest panelist tonight. What is the great lie about a runaway convention? Debbie, what do you say to that?
Well, I think the big lie that stands out, at least for me, is that, well, gosh, if they get in this convention, they could just completely change the Constitution and even change the ratification process.
Okay. And I remember one time in a conservative political meeting, when somebody found out that I'm with Convention of States, their response was, well, I don't want to open the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And guess what? I don't want to open it either. I just want to amend it. So that's part of the big lie. Anybody else? Dale Parrish, what do you see as the great lie?
Well, I think it's basically what Debbie said, that the whole Constitution would be open up for change, and including the amendments. And of course, the Second Amendment people are very afraid, very fearful that this would be an opportunity to do away with the Second Amendment. So there's also a lot of fear about not only the Constitution, the basic Constitution being revamped, but also the amendments. Yeah,
and you know, and that's a lie, because the COS application for this convention specifies 3 topics: fiscal restraint, term limits for federal officials, and limiting the scope and reach of the federal government. And they couldn't address the Second Amendment because all they can address is something that falls under one of those 3 topics. Somebody else, Ken or Gary or the other Dale. Okay, what do you have for us?
Well, I was just going to mention that, Dale Parrish mentioned a couple of times, he used the word fear. And, the whole purpose of this lie, this myth, is basically to promote fear, because this is not a factual argument. This is an emotional argument. Yeah. And it's the same type of thing we heard during COVID, right? I mean, you've got to lock yourselves in your homes. You got to shut your businesses down. holy smoke, this thing's going to run rampant through the United States and a bunch of you are going to die. It was all about promoting fear to gain, control of the discussion. Same exact thing that we're facing here.
Fear is a primary motivator of the human being. And if they can get us afraid of things, they can have their way. Ken.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw up a comment from Paul Phillips, who it's just what I thought it was an interesting comment that he says it's self-evident that the framers knew exactly what they meant by a convention of the states when they drafted the mechanism into Article 5 because they were participating in a convention of states at the time. That was an interesting comment.
Paul, that's right on. Thank you. Thank you for that insight. Yes, self-evident. They knew what they were talking about because that was a convention of the states. Gary?
Yeah, I want to second what Dale Tipton was talking about because I listened to the debates in several of the states, and the whole thing that the legislators were just paralyzed, literally paralyzed by fear, that they've been convinced that if a convention of states happened, something bad, could come out of it, and we can't take that chance. And it really was an absence of logical thinking, and it was just fear, and it was a sad thing to watch.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the great lie. Yep. Stirring up fear. Dale Tipton again.
Just another, just want a little shout out to Mr. Paul Phillips, because he was key in pulling a bunch of this research together so that we could have these answers to, to fight off these, these myths and lies. So thanks again to Paul for doing that for us.
Yeah, Paul wrote an extensive blog post for us a while back, and the facts and information in that blog post really informed this roundtable. Yes, Ken.
Yeah, we had one other comment from one of our faithful. Susan Lyon says that nothing can be changed without 3/4 of the states ratifying it. Correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Susan. Yep. And when
Debbie had her hand up.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see the hand. Hi, Debbie. What you have?
Oh, that's okay. No, I think it's interesting that the opponents of Convention of States are saying that what the Constitution is saying to do is wrong. We're just following Article 5. And that's what the Constitution says, but they're concerned about protecting the Constitution. I'm like, well, why wouldn't we do what it says? It just doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah. Either they trust the Constitution or they don't. Dale Parrish, I saw your.
I did it again.
I didn't hear anything.
Mute myself. I just wanted to tag on to what Debbie said. We're using the Constitution to save the Constitution.
Ooh, that sounds like Marengo Mike. I heard him say that too. Yeah. Yeah, and if you trust the Constitution, then you can feel safe in doing what it says.
Yep.
Okay. So we've batted the lie around for a little bit. I've got another question here, and it is what safeguards do we have against a runaway convention? And we have some safeguards there. And a while back, a few years ago, when Dale Parrish was our state director, he put together a video. It's actually a narrated PowerPoint, and he calls these firewalls. There are 5 firewalls that protect us from having a runaway convention. And the audio on it is a little bit soft. So viewers, listeners, you might want to adjust the sound on your computer. We're going to play that for you. It's only a few minutes long, and then we'll come back and talk about it. So here's Dale Parrish on the 5 firewalls.
Regarding this fear of a runaway convention. History does not support the concept of a runaway convention. The Constitutional Convention was not a runaway. 11 of the 13 states were sent there to do whatever it took to fix the Articles of Confederation. However, the decades-long fear of a runaway is still prevalent and powerful. When I ponder preventing a runaway, the concept of firewalls comes to mind. And how could these firewalls be breached in order to create a runaway convention? I see 5 firewalls in place to prevent a runaway convention. First of all, the application, or sometimes referred to as the call. Number 2, the convention rules. 3, the commissioners. 4, the majority vote. And 5, finally, ratification. Each firewall would have to be transgressed for a runaway to happen. Well, the first firewall to be breached is the application, or sometimes referred to as the call. By 1787, protocols for multi-government gatherings or conventions were standardized and generally accepted. The sponsor drafted a document referred to as an application specifying time, place, and subject matter. Now this is very important, subject matter. Subject matter limited the convention agenda. The Convention of States application, in which 34 states will make application for a Convention of States, stipulates the subject matter as, quote, impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, limit the power and jurisdiction of the federal government, and limit the terms of office for its officials, quote. The convention must be limited to the subject matter. But let's say a crack developed in this wall and somehow a non-subject matter topic gets through. The second firewall would be the convention rules. Rules are developed and determined at the convention. 2 major sources of rules already exist and could be adopted as convention rules. First, in 2015, Professor Rob Natelson, one of the nation's leading Article 5 experts, crafted an initial draft of rules for a Convention of States along with Convention of States project co-founder Michael Ferris. This document is commonly referred to as the Compendium and is available on the Convention of States website. The second source is Mason's Manual of Legislative Procedures, which is the official authority of most state legislatures in the United States. Mason's is to legislatures what Robert's Rule of Order would be to clubs and groups. Both sources of rules would prohibit deviations from the application. Now let's say we have the application wall breached and now the rules are ignored and an out of order proposal is accepted. The third firewall is the commissioners. States are free to select their commissioners and states are free to determine the size of their committee. Most states, though, will severely limit the authority of each commissioner and plus closely monitor each commissioner as well as the convention proceedings. Legislatures will be monitoring their delegates and proceedings. For example, the state of Indiana has set forth in Senate Enrolled Act 224 and 225 strict guidelines for commissioners, such as a vote cast outside instructions is void. Also, any delegate who casts such a vote forfeits appointment and is guilty of a Class D felony. Well, let's say all the state legislatures have stopped monitoring proceedings, the application wall has been breached, the rules wall has been breached, and no other commissioner, and it only takes one, tried to overrule the out-of-order proposal, and the commissioner wall, therefore, is also breached. Well, now we come to the fourth firewall, and that is the majority vote. Any suggested amendment must garner a majority vote, 1 vote per state, of 26 to be considered a proposed amendment. From the compendium referenced earlier in rules, rule number 4, all votes shall be taken by states, with each state having 1 vote. Now keep in mind, right now, 33 states in our country are conservatively controlled state legislatures, and 34 states have used the same application to call for this convention of states. And that application would disallow this out of order proposal. But even with these numbers, somehow 26 states vote in favor of this suggested out of order proposal. And consequently, this fourth wall is also breached. Well, finally, we come to the 5th firewall, and that is ratification. Article 5 stipulates that 3/4, that's 38, of state legislatures must approve a proposed amendment for ratification. All it would take is 13 states of the 34 that made application, or of the 33 controlled by conservatives, to not ratify in order to reject ratification. 13 non-ratifying states would mean the threshold of 38 would not be met. So all 5 walls would have to be breached in order for an out-of-order proposal to be ratified. The bottom line here is we feel that a runaway convention is structurally, factually, and numerically not possible.
Wow. I can't think of anything more safe in public policy than the Article 5 Convention of States. Those 5 firewalls, each one would have to be breached. Ken, what do you have for us?
Just a comment and a question. I know that as we are looking at this to obviously help people understand and how to address the concerns of a runaway convention, obviously the forefathers had it in mind that it's got to be a little bit difficult to get an amendment passed, and it was designed that way. Yet one of the things that I've heard, and I think would be helpful maybe for Debbie to address a little bit, is this point that some people make that we have a living constitution, one that they say would keep up with the times, that we're living in a modern society that the forefathers never dreamed of some of these things, and we basically can't keep up with the Constitution because of how difficult it is to get it amended. I think it might be helpful, and maybe Debbie has some comments on this as to how we might address people who think this way about a living Constitution.
Okay, Debbie, what do you think about that?
Well, we know that when the founders put together the Constitution, they looked ahead to what could happen. That was the whole point. It wasn't just a Constitution that would work for the first 50 years. It was a Constitution that they felt would work forever, with an amendment process in case there was one needed. So I feel like they put all their heads together, very smart men from all different walks of life, over May, June, July, August, September, to come up with this. They must have talked about every option, what could happen, what wouldn't happen, what might happen 100 years from now, what would happen if our government got too heavy, too much central government. So I think they already addressed all that. So it's not a living constitution. It doesn't change. It's like the Bible. It's forever true. And most of those men who wrote the Constitution were also knew how the Bible was true forever too. And I think they wrote it with that in mind.
Okay.
I'm sorry, John. I just find it interesting that the same people that claim that we could have a runaway constitution want to turn around at the same time and change it or claim that it's a living constitution. It's just, it's a
runaway constitution.
They want it both ways.
Yeah, Dale Parrish.
I think the if I understand this right, big drawback against a living constitution is that it opens it up to be constantly changed, and whoever is in charge, whatever administration takes control, changes the Constitution to fit what they think it should be. And I think obviously the founders wanted to avoid that and wanted we the people to have control of that.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a good thing that we don't have a living constitution. I've heard that term used many times by people today that believe that it should be a living constitution, but it's not something that we want in this country. There are other countries that you can see that happen. I know, Debbie, you've told me about how many times our Constitution, how long our Constitution has been in existence.
Mhm.
And I think it's because it's not a living Constitution. It's not always changing.
Yeah, the average age of a constitution is 17 years. And
Wow.
we're at 234, something like that.
Isn't that something? Average age is 17 years. That's a living Constitution, folks.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, and
Dale-
I'd add that it's living. The intention of the founding fathers was to make it living in so much as we are a republic, and it was never intended for us to have abdicated so much of our power and authority to the government. Like, that's the extent that it's living, is through Article 5, through our involvement at the local and the state level, and our abdication of that responsibility as self-governing citizens has what's turned it into a flagrantly abused living constitution, because we've got executive order after executive order, Supreme Court ruling after Supreme Court ruling that has changed and transformed a very short and straightforward document into this monstrosity that is thousands of pages in length, that it does nothing more than refer to itself to edify those that had something to say at the time, because it was going to be advantageous to their political career. And we've got to get away from that. Like, it's living as long as we are going to be involved in it. But that is the extent of it. Like Debbie's right. Like, it was never meant to be what it is now. And that's the biggest problem we have.
Okay. Ken, what do you have?
Just wanted to throw a comment from our friend Robert, who adds to what Debbie was saying and brings up a good point. Are the 10 Commandments a living set of rules?
Good.
Good question. Point made. Touching.
That's a rhetorical question, and it's stated in order to make a point. Thank you, Robert. That's great. Ken, did I see a question flash on the screen during the firewalls video?
That was just an errant finger of mine.
Okay, I didn't get to read it really, but it seemed to say, is this narrated PowerPoint available for us to see? Something like that.
Yeah, the John Graves wanted to know if the narrated PowerPoint would be available to the RCs and DCs, and I told them that we certainly could make that available.
Well, it is available on YouTube. Dale Parrish, tell everybody how to find that video that we saw.
Okay, I'm glad
it's on our
that.
It's on our YouTube page.
Yeah, and I think there is the link, the YouTube link to that video, and it is on our YouTube page, Indiana Patriots for Convention of States. All of our videos, our past COS Indiana live broadcasts, as well as videos of this nature, are all on our YouTube page, Indiana Patriots for Convention of States.
Okay, so you need to take a screenshot of that or write it down real fast. And case matters, uppercase, lowercase,
Lowercase.
Underscore. Yep.
Well, and also, John, I was so impressed with that firewalls video. I believe I posted it in the general Slack channel for RCs and DCs to be able to take a look at.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Okay.
He did.
Okay. For those of you who
Brandon posted that link in the chat room too, so it's there. You just need to copy it.
All right. Yeah, and I hope a lot of our people find that useful, because I couldn't think of any better way for the panel to talk about those 5 firewalls. And I said, I want to include that actual video in the roundtable because Dale, you just laid it out there. And by golly, every one of those firewalls would have to be breached in order for the convention to run away.
You know,
isn't that amazing?
When I made that video, I think that I made that like in, I don't know, 2017, 2018. And I made that in response to fears being expressed about a runaway convention. So this theme of a runaway convention has been with us for years now, and apparently it is continuing to be a fear that is our opposition latches onto a great deal.
Well, I mean, I first heard that lie when I was in 5th grade in public school.
Really?
Yeah. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, and we had a good public school system. I mean, I can't complain. My education was good. I hated it at the time because I didn't like doing homework and stuff like that. Right. But I remember in 5th grade when we learned about the Constitution and our form of government. And we came to Article 5, and the teacher said there are 2 ways to amend the Constitution. One is for the Congress to propose an amendment, and the other one is for a convention of states. But she said that has never been tried because it would turn into a runaway convention. And I believed that lie from, what was that, age 10 up until, I won't tell you, in the 2000s when I became fully informed as an adult and started doing some reading on this thing. And it's not going to run away, and I don't think it can run away. Those firewalls are strong, and they're going to survive. So do we have anything else we want to say about this before we turn the page? Are all minds and hearts clear? Okay, I want to thank the Roundtable team for showing up tonight and for giving us your best input on the Runaway Convention lie. And now I want to show you a message from some young people answering the question, is the federal government broken?
Our government is definitely broken.
The EPA is totally out of control. I mean, VA is completely broken.
If a private business were to run things like the government, they would be out of business like that.
Our tax system is ridiculous.
And how are we supposed to pay for that and our student loans and find a place to live with no job? I mean, it's almost as if nobody really cares what happens to us anymore.
There are so many problems that we have, and that's just going to be placed on us.
My generation especially, we need to lead because enough is enough. DC needs to listen, and we need to take the power back to the people.
Yes, the federal government is broken, and Convention of States, COS action, has a solution as big as the problem. For you to get practically and meaningfully involved in Convention of States, I want to ask our state director, Dale Tipton, to talk about our Step Up program. Dale, take it away.
Well, obviously, from the content of our program tonight, it's evident that we very much believe in education, but the education that we all undergo to learn the truth about these facts is really meaningless without some kind of action. And so the Step Up Indiana program basically is a method whereby the average citizen can get involved in Convention of States and actually do something that is important, that can make a difference. And so if we click on this Step Up link here, it will open up a new screen that will talk about some different opportunities. And so as you see there on the page, you've got leadership opportunities, you've got volunteer opportunities, and you've got community opportunities. And so regardless of what type of person you are, whether you're a leader, a supporter, a follower, just about any way you could categorize yourself, whether or not you are close to your community, any way you wanted to look at this, there is an avenue of service where you can get involved as a citizen activist with Convention of States to promote our mission, to get this convention called. And so if any one of these individual links are clicked on, we can start with the leadership, and that will give you an idea. And what will come up, there will be a number of positions or roles, as we call them in Convention of States, that a person can accept. You can basically open up an account at conventionofstates.com, and you can see what all these are, and you can actually submit a very short, sweet application to do these kind of things. And you can see then the individual ones that are mentioned here, district captain, etc. They are highlighted. So if you click on any one of those, then you can get a job description, and it will take you to an area where you can do the application itself. And so there's a ton of information there for you to allow you to mull over, see what you might be good at, and all of those other kind of considerations you might have in your personal life. How much time do I have, etc., to find a place where you can fit into the organization and promote things. Maybe you're a good writer, and you can do some things with social media. Maybe you like to help organize events, and we do a lot of things with state and county fairs, festivals, gun shows, you name it. There's just a lot of things to choose from. Um, Volunteering has a little less responsibility than the leadership things. Um, and you can once again see social media, prayer warriors. We have a group of people that do nothing more than pray for people within the organization, and for the strength of our government and the people who are true patriots. We have legislative liaisons that maintain contact with our government leaders to promote our agenda. Just a number of different choices. Too many to really discuss here, but you can see where they are, and you can follow those up as you please. And then the final segment was on community organizations, which a lot of people don't think about, but what all is happening around you within your community that you could get involved in. How long, if you become a volunteer activist, you can engage yourself in a number of community efforts. For example, school board meetings. How many meetings have you been to as a parent or as a grandparent? Do you have any idea the things that are being discussed or what's being taught to the kids? It might be something that would be worth finding out. Same thing with city, county, all of those kind of things. How is your money being spent? Are the people elected really good stewardships for you as a person who has voted for them? We have telepatriot missions where you can set at home. Through the use of your telephone, you can make calls to encourage meetings, activities relating to promoting the Convention of States agenda, or get involved with a group of a team of people to block. Just go house to house, talk to people, ask for petitions to be signed, educate them face to face about what Convention of States is doing. And so this is just that's just a few things. I would just leave that with you to check out. The link is available there, as you can see. And we promote it through social media and other places from time to time. We really need your help as individual citizens, because if you remain a TV watcher without getting up and doing something about the bad news that you're hearing, nothing is going to change.
Thanks, Dale. Appreciate that very much. Well, that brings us to the end of this month's roundtable. Before I say goodbye, I want to give you our email address. If you have any questions at all about Convention of States, you can email them to us at this address, raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. That's raiseyourvoicecos@gmail.com. Now, be sure to tune in next Monday, May 29th. That's going to be Memorial Day, and we're going to show you a best of COS Indiana Live. And our next roundtable will be on the fourth Monday of June. That will be June 26th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, June 26th at 7 o'clock. And to close us out, here's a message from our National COS President, Mark Meckler, called The Day I'll Quit Fighting.
People who would give up. It doesn't make sense to me. Sam Adams said, for those of you who prefer safety and security over liberty, over the animating fight for liberty, I hope that you Enjoy licking the hands that feed you. May your chains rest lightly upon you, and may posterity forget that you are our countrymen. Like, do you understand that your kids and you are sentencing your kids and your grandkids and your friends' kids and your neighbors' kids to a lifetime of slavery and servitude, literally, of fear, of living in the darkness, but never, ever, never, never, never give up. George Washington lost the majority of his battles that he fought in the American Revolution. If you read his writings, if you read the letters where he was writing to Congress asking for money and troops, he was saying, we're losing. I don't have the troops I need. I don't have the supplies I need. Did he quit? What about the guys on the beach at Normandy? Like, what did they do? Did they just quit? Oh, there's, a lot of guys are dying around me. It's really bad. It looks really dismal. Those cliffs are huge. Machine gun fire raining down on us. And it's too hard. We should just quit. Thank God those people didn't quit. If they had, where would we be? I get discouraged, for sure. And I will quit fighting at some point. And that point is when the first shovel of dirt hits the top of my box 6 feet down.